It's Friday, so it's time for our agile, not so agile episode of the Daily Stand Up Podcast. So I thought I'd talk to you about something really interesting. So, have you ever had one of those weeks? You know the week I'm talking about, where everything just doesn't go as planned. Let me give you a little hint about my week. So, the good parts of my week: I got to talk to my son, who'll soon be returning from his 2-year church mission out in Honduras, which is completely exciting. He'll be back in March in just a few short days. I got my home further prepared and ready to get some exciting things happening here. So we needed to do some paint, we needed to do some updating. So we got a lot of that done. So I'm feeling really good about the progress we made here. Also, in that same effort, we had the outside of our house being pressure washed and painted. Well, how about this? The painter who was pressure washing the outside second story roof fell off of our roof, or should I say flew off of our roof like Superman. And now we have that trial. So next we had to figure out who the new painter was going to be and what we're going to do and how we're going to get the materials that we had already paid for. It was just a mess. It was a nightmare. It was one of those weeks where I had lots of good things, lots of highs and lots of lows. And I think that we all go through that from time to time. But the question I want to challenge you with, the thought that came to my mind, is how do we balance the highs and lows? How do we get through those trials so that we can recognize when the positive things happen? So for me, somebody once told me this story, and it started like this, and I'm sure you've heard this puzzle before. If you've never tasted salt before, and you gave salt to someone who's never tasted it, how would you describe what salt tastes like to someone who's never tasted it before without using the word salty? It's an impossible task, right? It's an impossible feat. There's no way to describe what salt tastes like without saying salty unless you say not sweet or not savory, right? So with that being said, sometimes in order for us to experience some of the better things in life, we have to occasionally get a little bit of salt. So for us to have some of that sweetness, we have to have a little bit of salt. I couldn't help but think of all the times in my life and reminisce where some people call it the calm before a storm. There's always that quiet peace before something bad happens, but there's also the opposite. There's also the storm before the rainbow. Whenever there's a bad storm, there's always a rainbow that follows typically, and a rainbow is usually more intense and more gorgeous based on the intensity of the storm, which I think is really, really interesting. And to date, I haven't figured out the science behind that, but it just usually works out that way. And living here in Florida, I can tell you, I've seen some of the most beautiful sunsets. I've seen some of the most beautiful rainbows. But I've also experienced some of the worst storms and some of the worst things that have happened in my life. And one of the challenges that I faced was, from time to time, I feel like, I don't want to use the word upset because that's not the right word. I feel almost like things aren't pulling in my favor. And whether it's a lack of students registering for class, or whether it's a coaching client that wrapped up and doesn't need any more coaching hours, or whether it's something financial or just something physical, or whether it's something that I see that I want to do that I just don't have the opportunity or can't do. A lot of times I hit that point where I feel like I'm about to break. This is crazy, right? And then I remembered something. There's another piece of advice that I remember. And this piece of advice was given to me by a spiritual leader. And this spiritual person turned to me and I asked a question. They said, have you ever been to Yellowstone National Park? And I said, of course, yeah. And I've been down to southern Utah to those national parks. So I've been to a lot of places where I'm away from city traffic, off the beating path. And one of the things he asked me is, if you've ever been in Wyoming, or Montana, have you ever looked up at the night sky? I said, of course, I love it. That's when you can see all the stars. And when I say all the stars, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but it is tremendous. It's incredible. You cannot believe how many stars are in the sky. And then he asked me, he says, have you been to New York? And I said, of course I have. Manhattan? I said, yeah. He says, have you ever tried to look for the stars there? I said, yeah. I said, you can't see them. They're not there. He says, oh, they're there. He says, but they're completely drowned out by all the things around it. They're drowned out by all the things of the world. He says, all the light pollution, all the things that are happening there are drowning out those stars. And this is the part that was my aha moment. This is the part that shocked me to the core. This is the part that rocked my world. He says, sometimes you have to remember that stars are only allowed to shine their brightest when they're in the darkest space. I'll say that again. Stars are only allowed to shine their brightest. We're in the darkest space. And the star is always shining. The star is always there. But sometimes we just can't see it. We just can't permeate through all the light pollution and the things that are going on. We can't get to the point where we realize that our star is still shining or that someone else's star is shining and we don't recognize it. And because we don't recognize it, people think that their star is dimming or that their star is not doing what it's supposed to do or that their star is broken. And that's not the case at all. If you change the environment where you are, it allows you to see things from a different perspective. And I think that's the key message. Sometimes we put ourselves in environments where we're so surrounded by everything else that we don't have an opportunity to see or learn from or experience certain things because we surround ourselves with so much noise and so much so much angst and so much, oh my goodness, what is this? That we miss out on some of the key, most important things that we should be worried about. So where am I going with this? Moral of the story, right? If you are in a dark place, or if you feel like the world's against you, or if you are just overwhelmed by the noise and you're just like, make it stop, right? Something's got to change. Remember that when you're in those situations, that's the chance that you have to shine the brightest. And that's the chance you have to see other people shine their brightest. Don't give up on other people. Give them an opportunity to serve you and look for opportunities where you can serve other people. Because when you lose yourself in the service of others, that's when you're going to discover who you really are. So on this Friday, I challenge you to find a way to do a random act of kindness for someone. Find a way to come out of your shell. Find a way to shine bright like a diamond. Find a way to be that shining star. I want you to be so bright that I could see you from Times Square in New York City. That's what I want. And in return, I promise that I'm going to do best I can to shine that way too. Because at the end of the day, it's not a contest to see whose star shines brighter. At the end of the day, it's an opportunity for each of us to understand and appreciate the time, gifts, talents, capabilities of other people. And it's time for us to really help them to figure out what their path is, what their journey is, and how they can have value and shine brighter each day. Because when other people shine brighter, you shine brighter. And when you uplift others, one of the things that I always tell people, when you uplift others, that is in turn showing you to the rest of the world how you're lifted up. Because sometimes you don't realize it. You feel like if you're lifting somebody up, that means you're putting them above you. It means making you lower. That's not necessarily true. When you're lifting someone up, it gives them an opportunity to reach back with their hand and pull you up with them. That's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great weekend. Until next Monday, stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care. Bye now.